The Galactic Council had many warnings written in its archives, but none were as chilling as the one about Earth. It was not just another abandoned world. It was a place of whispers and silence, a planet where no conqueror had ever returned. For thousands of years, civilizations had come, drawn by its rich resources and strategic position, but one by one, they vanished, leaving only ruins scattered across the surface. The warnings were clear: do not go to Earth, but to Supreme Commander Valtor of the Zevran Dominion. It sounded more like a challenge than a threat. His people had conquered worlds, shattered empires, and bent entire species to their will. No planet, no matter how cursed, could withstand the might of his war fleet. Ignoring the archives and dismissing the fear of lesser species, he led his armada toward the silent blue world that had defied the galaxy for millennia. As the fleet entered Earth's orbit, the vastness of the planet stretched before them, a world both beautiful and unsettling. There were no signs of human life, no great cities, no space stations, nothing that suggested an advanced species still thrived here. Instead, there were broken monuments, crumbling skyscrapers, and dense forests reclaiming once mighty civilizations. It was a graveyard, but of what they did not yet know. Valtor ordered his troops to scan the surface, searching for any signs of resistance. But instead of energy signatures or weapons, they found something far more disturbing: wreckage from 100 different species, ships and machines from empires long forgotten, scattered like bones across the landscape. It was as if the planet itself had swallowed those who dared to claim it. Determined to uncover the truth, the Zevran forces landed in what had once been a massive city, its towering structures now overtaken by nature. The air was thick with an eerie silence, and even the winds seemed to whisper warnings they could not understand. As the soldiers moved cautiously through the ruins, their sensors detected something strange: ghostly energy readings, echoes of the past playing out like distant memories. They saw visions of battles that had taken place centuries ago, glimpses of alien warriors fighting against an unseen enemy, their screams fading into nothingness. Each ruin told the same story: a powerful army had come, only to be erased from existence. One of Valtor's lead scientists, a cautious thinker named Rhynak, urged the commander to retreat. Something was wrong. No natural force could erase entire civilizations without leaving a trace of resistance. Yet, the records showed that not a single invader had ever returned. It was as if Earth itself had consumed them. But Valtor was not a man of fear. He was a conqueror, and he refused to believe in ghost stories. If Earth held a secret, he would uncover it and make it his own. He ordered the excavation of a massive underground structure hidden beneath the ruins, a place untouched for countless years. As they dug deeper, the walls began to pulse with strange energy, symbols of an unknown language glowing beneath layers of dust. Then, something awakened. The ground trembled, the ruins groaned, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air. The soldiers fell silent as an ancient voice, neither mechanical nor organic, whispered through their minds. "You were warned." In that moment, the planet came alive. Machines buried for eons erupted from the Earth, their designs unlike anything seen in the galaxy. They were not human, nor were they alien. They were something beyond both, something built not just for war, but for extermination. Energy surged through the ruins, forming massive defensive grids, weapons activating with an intelligence that should not have existed. The fleet above, watching from orbit, reported chaos as their ships were pulled from the sky by an unseen force, torn apart as if they were mere toys in the hands of a god. Panic spread through the ranks as the realization struck them: this was not an abandoned planet. This was a trap, designed to lure in conquerors and turn their own strength against them. The machines adapted instantly, analyzing their weapons, their armor, their very biology, and countering them within seconds. Valtor's forces, so used to overwhelming their enemies, now found themselves helpless against an enemy they could not even understand. Every strategy failed, every counterattack was absorbed, and every escape route was cut off. The soldiers who tried to flee found themselves trapped in endless corridors that shifted and reshaped, leading them deeper into the ruins instead of out. They were being hunted, but not for sport. No, this was something worse. Valtor, realizing too late that he had made a mistake, tried to call for a retreat, but his command ship was already being dismantled in orbit, its crew screaming as the ship was absorbed into the planet's defenses. One by one, his generals fell silent, their signals lost. There was no battle left to fight. There was only erasure. In his final moments, as the machines closed in around him, he understood the true horror of Earth. The humans had not been conquered. They had transcended. They had built something that ensured their enemies would never escape. The planet was no longer just their home. It was their vengeance, a tomb for those foolish enough to believe they could claim it. And then, silence. The last of the Zevran forces vanished, their names already fading from history. Earth returned to its slumber, waiting for the next empire to ignore the warnings and fall into its endless graveyard. Far beyond, in the depths of the Galactic Council, a new message was quietly added to the forbidden records. Do not approach Earth. Do not disturb its slumber. The fallen do not return. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface, the unseen watchers continued their vigil, waiting for the next intruder who dared to challenge the graveyard of 1,000 empires. The ruins stretched endlessly across the landscape, silent and cold, their towering remains whispering the secrets of 1,000 lost civilizations. The Zevran Dominion had fallen like all the others, consumed by something they could neither understand nor fight. But the galaxy would not accept ignorance forever. When the Dominion failed to return from Earth, it became clear that the warnings were not myths. And yet, curiosity was a force stronger than fear. A new expedition, led by a coalition of powerful races, had come to uncover the truth. Their ships, sleek and advanced, entered Earth's orbit cautiously, scanning for any signs of life. But the planet remained as it had always been, a silent graveyard, waiting for its next visitors. Commander Relth of the Etherian Collective watched from the bridge of his warship, unease creeping through him as his fleet descended. The data was troubling. The wreckage of Zevran ships still floated in the upper atmosphere, torn apart as if by unseen hands. On the surface, ruins of alien origin lay scattered like bones, untouched by time, their structures still humming with energy no one could trace. His scientists assured him there were no active defenses, no energy signatures to suggest a threat, yet something felt wrong. The air itself carried a weight, an oppressive stillness that seemed to press against his mind. But they had come too far to turn back. The truth of Earth had remained hidden for too long. The expedition teams spread across the ruins. They discovered remnants of past battles, abandoned weapons, shattered armor, even fossilized remains of creatures that should not have perished so easily. Yet there was something missing. There were no bodies, no signs of mass graves, no evidence of what had happened to those who had come before. It was as if the planet had simply erased them. Relth's second-in-command, a cautious strategist named Orcs, insisted they should leave while they could. But Relth was not convinced. He believed that whatever had destroyed the others had either gone dormant or had never existed at all. The warnings, the myths, the fear, they were all just stories, exaggerated over time. He ordered his teams to go deeper into the ruins, searching for whatever secrets Earth had hidden away. The first sign of trouble came when a scouting party entered a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with strange, glowing symbols. The air crackled with unseen energy, and the moment they stepped inside, their communication signals were lost. The team's last transmission was a single, garbled message, the voices. They're everywhere. And then silence. When a second team was sent to retrieve them, they found no trace of the scouts. No weapons, no equipment, not even footprints in the dust. It was as if they had never existed. Panic spread through the ranks as more soldiers began reporting strange occurrences. They heard whispers in languages they did not recognize, saw figures standing in the distance only to vanish when approached. The ruins were no longer just ruins. They were alive with something old, something watching. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling became, an overwhelming sensation that they were trespassers in a place that did not belong to them. And then the echoes began. At first, it was just flickering lights, shadows moving where none should be. But soon, the visions became clearer. The expedition saw moments from the past, entire battles playing out before them as if time itself had been trapped within the walls of Earth. They saw the Zevran Dominion fighting against an unseen enemy, their weapons useless, their soldiers vanishing into nothingness. Then came the Varnax Empire before them, mighty and ruthless, falling in the same way. And before them, the Kraith, the Uldari, the Exaloth, each empire falling one by one, their final moments repeating in endless loops. Relth watched in horror as his own soldiers were pulled into the visions, their bodies fading as they became part of the echoes. They screamed, reaching out, but nothing could save them. The past was swallowing them, pulling them into its endless cycle of death. And suddenly, he understood. Earth was not just a graveyard. It was a prison, trapping the echoes of every fallen empire, ensuring that their failure was never forgotten. Every invader who had come had not just died, they'd been absorbed into the very fabric of the planet. Their last moments were playing over and over, forever. Orcs, realizing the truth, shouted for the fleet to retreat. But it was already too late. The ships in orbit, once standing strong, were now nothing more than shadows, flickering in and out of existence as the past consumed them. The expedition had never come to uncover the truth. They had come to become part of it. Relth turned to run, but his body was already growing light, his hands flickering as if he were nothing more than a memory. Around him, his soldiers cried out, their voices blending with those of the long dead, their fates sealed. And then, silence. The ruins stood as they always had, empty and forgotten, waiting for the next empire to come seeking answers. Far above, in the Galactic Council, the records of the expedition were quietly erased, as they had been for every fleet before them. No one returned. No one ever would. Deep beneath the planet's surface, the echoes continued their endless cycle, the whispers of the past waiting patiently for their next visitors. And in the cold silence of space, a single message pulsed through the darkness. You were warned. The cold void of space stretched infinitely as the massive warship Eldrin's Wrath emerged from hyperspace, its metallic surface reflecting the dim glow of a dying star. Admiral Karvek stood at the bridge, his eyes fixed on the ancient planet below. Earth, the lost world, the forbidden place, the graveyard of 1,000 empires. It had been abandoned for centuries, its name whispered in fear across the galaxy. Yet, Karvek and his fleet had come, drawn by legends of untold power buried beneath its surface. The Galactic Council had forbidden any contact with Earth, but Karvek was not a man who followed rules. If there was something hidden here, something worth the risk, then he would claim it for his people. The planet below was dark, lifeless. Thick clouds swirled across its atmosphere, and the cities, once the pride of a forgotten species, lay in ruins reclaimed by time and nature. But his sensors told a different story. Deep underground, something was alive. A signal, faint but persistent, pulsed beneath the surface, as if calling out to anyone who dared to listen. The scientists on board whispered about ancient weapons, dormant machines left behind by the long-extinct humans. If they could harness that technology, they would become unstoppable. Karvek smirked at the thought. Humanity had been nothing more than a primitive species, wiped from existence long ago. Whatever remained of their creations would soon belong to him. With a simple command, landing craft descended into the ruined world, carrying soldiers, engineers, and excavation teams. The air was thick with silence, as if the planet itself was watching, waiting. They moved cautiously, scanning the ruins for any sign of life. There was nothing. No movement. No threats. Just endless, empty streets filled with remnants of a forgotten age. But the deeper they ventured, the more they felt it a presence, unseen yet undeniable. The ground beneath them seemed to hum, a low vibration barely detectable but growing stronger with each passing moment. And then they found it. Beneath the ruins of a vast, collapsed city, a massive structure lay buried, a towering monolith of metal and stone, covered in strange symbols that pulsed with energy. The signal was coming from inside. Karvek ordered the doors to be breached, eager to claim whatever lay within. As his soldiers worked, unease spread through the ranks. Something was wrong. The air was charged, the silence oppressive. Even the machines seemed reluctant to obey, their systems glitching, their lights flickering, as if some unseen force was resisting their intrusion. And then, with a deep, resonant groan, the ancient doors opened. Inside, a vast chamber stretched beyond sight, filled with towering machines, their forms sleek and untouched by time. At the center stood a massive figure, a humanoid construct, larger than any war machine they had ever encountered, its surface etched with symbols that glowed like dying embers. It had been waiting. For how long, no one could say. But now, as intruders walked its halls, something within it stirred. The silent guardian had begun to wake. Karvek stepped forward, his eyes filled with greed. This was it, the weapon of legends, the reason Earth had remained untouched. A guardian, built by a lost species, left behind to protect secrets long buried. He ordered his scientists to activate it, to bring it under their control. But the moment they touched the ancient console, the air shifted. The walls trembled, the symbols flared with burning light, and a deep, inhuman voice echoed through the chamber. Unauthorized presence detected. Defense protocols engaged. Panic erupted as the Guardian's eyes lit up, two burning orbs of white fire. The ground shook violently as the machines surrounding it came to life, their long, dormant systems roaring back into existence. The soldiers opened fire, but their weapons were useless. Energy shields flared around the Guardian, absorbing every blast as if they were nothing more than insect bites. It had been asleep for centuries, but now it was awake, and it remembered its purpose. With a movement faster than anything its size should have been capable of, the Guardian struck, its arms slicing through the nearest group of soldiers, turning them into nothing but dust. The machines around it moved with terrifying precision, their weapons carving through armored vehicles and defense drones as if they were made of paper. Karvek screamed for retreat, but the exits had already been sealed. The Guardian had no intention of letting them leave. Above the planet, the fleet received a distress signal, but it was already too late. The skies over Earth burned as ancient orbital defense systems, long thought dead, roared to life. Energy beams lanced through the darkness, tearing warships apart as if they were mere toys. The flagship Eldrin's Wrath tried to escape, its engines roaring as it pulled away from the doomed planet. But the Guardian had planned for this. The moment the ship reached high orbit, time itself seemed to shudder, and then, in an instant, the flagship was gone, erased from existence as if it had never been there. On the surface, Karvek and the last of his men fell, their bodies dissolving into dust, their screams swallowed by the endless hum of the awakened Guardian. The machines stood victorious, their purpose fulfilled once more. The intruders had been eliminated. The silence returned. The Guardian went still, its eyes dimming, its body returning to its motionless state. But it was not sleeping anymore. It was watching, waiting for the next foolish invader who would come in search of Earth's secrets. Far beyond, in the depths of the Galactic Council, another report was erased, another fleet vanished without a trace. The warnings remained the same. Do not approach Earth. Do not wake what sleeps beneath. The Guardian does not forget. And deep beneath the ruined cities, the silent Guardian stood eternal, its duty never-ending, its patience infinite. The battlefield stretched across the ruined plains, once home to towering cities, now reduced to nothing but craters and shattered remains of an ancient civilization. The sky was darkened by thick clouds of smoke, and the ground trembled under the weight of war machines preparing for the final clash. The invaders had come in numbers beyond counting, their fleet descending upon Earth like a swarm of locusts, eager to claim its secrets and wipe away the last remnants of its defenders. But the humans, the species they had once dismissed as weak and primitive, had refused to surrender. They had fought. And now, in the last hours of the war, they stood unbroken. General Varek of the Exelthar Dominion watched from the high command tower, his reptilian eyes scanning the battlefield with a mixture of rage and disbelief. This was not how it was supposed to end. The invasion had been swift, the orbital bombardments reducing Earth cities to rubble in mere days. Resistance had been expected, but nothing like this. The humans had fought back with an endurance that defied reason, a fury that should have been impossible. Even when their armies fell, their people scattered, they had not broken. Instead, they had grown stronger, more relentless, more dangerous. At the center of the battlefield, the last human stronghold stood a towering fortress of steel and stone, surrounded by trenches, energy barriers, and weapons salvaged from fallen enemy warships. It should have fallen weeks ago. It should not have lasted this long. But inside, the last warriors of Earth remained, their numbers dwindling, their bodies exhausted, yet their will unshaken. Commander Elias Carter stood at the highest rampart, his uniform torn, his face smeared with dirt and blood, but his eyes burning with defiance. His people were dying, their ammunition running low, their reinforcements non-existent. But surrender was never an option. If this was to be their last battle, then they would make sure the invaders remembered their names for eternity. The ground shook as the XLTHAR siege engines moved forward, massive mechanical beasts designed to break through the final defenses. Thousands of enemy troops marched behind them, their weapons humming with deadly energy. The final assault had begun. Elias turned to his remaining soldiers, men and women who had lost everything, yet stood ready to fight until their last breath. He raised his voice, echoing across the stronghold. This is it. We stand here, not for survival, but for vengeance. Let them know that Earth was never theirs to take. Let them fear the name of humanity. A deafening roar answered him, a battle cry that carried through the ruins, shaking even the hearts of their enemies. As the invaders stormed forward, the last defenders unleashed hell upon them. Bullets, energy blasts, missiles, and fire rained down, tearing through the enemy ranks with terrifying precision. Every street, every building, every corridor had become a trap filled with hidden explosives, ambushes, and last-stand fighters ready to sell their lives dearly. The XLTHAR, for all their superior numbers and advanced weaponry, found themselves trapped in a nightmare, surrounded by an enemy that refused to die. The battle raged for hours, turning the land into a wasteland of blood and metal. The fortress walls crumbled, the trenches were overrun, and one by one, the defenders fell. Yet, even as the last human soldiers stood atop the ruins, surrounded and outnumbered 100-1, they fought on. Elias fired his last rounds, then grabbed a fallen enemy's weapon and kept shooting. His comrades, wounded and exhausted, stood beside him, their final stand a testament to the unyielding spirit of their species. Varric watched in horror as his troops hesitated. They had expected an easy victory, yet they faced warriors who would rather die than kneel. Fear crept into their ranks. This was not just a battle, it was a message. If this was how humans fought when they were at their weakest, what horrors would they unleash if they ever rose again? And then, the sky burned. A pulse of energy surged through the battlefield as the humans activated their final weapon. A self-destruct mechanism buried beneath the fortress, a parting gift to their enemies. The invaders screamed as the ground cracked open, explosions ripping through the... When the dust settled, nothing remained but ruins. The last humans were gone, their bodies turned to ash. But their message endured. The XLTHAR fleet, shaken and broken, abandoned the planet, leaving behind only whispers of the warriors who never surrendered. Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's final stand spread like wildfire. The humans had lost, but they had not been defeated. They had taught the galaxy the price of underestimating them. And in the darkness of space, in hidden colonies far beyond the enemy's reach, the remnants of humanity watched, waiting for the day they would return. The last stand of the invaders was only the beginning. The explorers stood at the edge of the massive stone structure, their eyes filled with awe and unease. The planet, marked only as designation X-92 in the galactic records, had been abandoned for thousands of years. No signs of intelligent life, no active transmissions, nothing but an ancient ruin standing alone in the middle of a barren landscape. And yet, as Commander Julian Carter stepped closer, he felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. Something was wrong here. The air was still, too still, as if even time itself feared to move. The walls of the ruin were covered in strange carvings, their symbols weathered but unmistakably deliberate, telling a story that no one had read for millennia. But the most disturbing thing was the warning.it was written in 100 different languages. Some ancient, some belonging to species long extinct, yet among them was one he recognized immediately. English. The letters were crude, carved with desperation, but the message was clear. DONOTWAKETHEM. DONOTDIG. DONOTSTOY. Julian exchanged uneasy glances with his team. This planet had been listed as uninhabited, yet some human had been here before. How? And more importantly, what had they been so afraid of? Dr. Vasquez, the team's archaeologist, stepped forward, running her fingers over the carvings. This is not just a warning. It's a record, she murmured, tracing the symbols. Something happened here. A war, a disaster, or something worse. She turned to Julian. We need to report this. But before anyone could respond, a low hum vibrated through the ground. The ruins trembled, dust falling from the ancient walls, as if the planet itself had just taken a breath. The team froze. Something had been disturbed. Get back to the ship. Now, Julian ordered, his voice sharp. The warning carved into the stone echoed in his mind. Do not wake them. But it was too late. The air around them grew heavy, thick with an unseen force pressing against their bodies. The shadows within the ruins shifted, moving unnaturally, stretching toward them. And then came the whispers. Not spoken aloud, but inside their heads. Voices, ancient and hungry, whispering in a language that was not meant for living ears. Dr. Vasquez clutched her head, her eyes wide with terror. They're here, she gasped. They never left. The realization struck Julian like a hammer. This planet was not abandoned. It was a prison. Something had been sealed here long ago, and their presence had just broken the chains. The ground beneath them cracked, dark tendrils slithering up from the earth like the hands of something buried for too long. The team ran, their footsteps pounding against the rocky ground as the ruins behind them came alive, shifting, twisting, as if reality itself was unraveling. Their ship was only a few hundred meters away, but the distance felt infinite as the shadows chased them, hungry and relentless. One of the crew, Lieutenant Harris, screamed as a tendril wrapped around his leg, pulling him back into the darkness. His screams were cut short, replaced by a silence more terrifying than sound. Julian pushed forward, dragging Vasquez with him as they reached the ship's ramp. The doors sealed shut behind them, but even inside, the voices did not stop. They were awake now. And they knew. The ship's alarms blared as Julian rushed to the controls. Get us out of here, he shouted, his hands shaking as he initiated the emergency launch sequence. The engines roared to life, lifting them from the cursed ground. Through the viewport, he saw the ruins collapse, the entire planet trembling as if it were alive. But the worst part was what he saw beneath the crumbling stone. Eyes. Thousands of them, buried beneath the surface, opening for the first time in eons. The ship tore through the atmosphere, escaping the gravitational pull just as a pulse of energy erupted from the planet, sending shockwaves across space. The whispers finally faded, but the weight of what had happened remained. Julian turned to his crew, only 4 of them left now, their faces pale with terror. We have to warn them, Vasquez whispered. The galaxy. Everyone. They need to know. Julian nodded, his mind racing. Someone had left that warning long ago, hoping it would be enough to keep others away. But it hadn't been enough. And now, whatever had been imprisoned, there was free. The message carved into the stone was no longer a warning of the past. It was a warning for the future.